Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to see. Yeah. Okay. Uh, Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Bombay Psychiatric Society clinical meetings. We're very happy to be here today evening because we're having the clinical meeting after a lapse of nearly over a year. And at the outset, as the president of Bombay Psychiatric Society, I welcome all of you. I'm very thankful personally to the Department of Psychiatry, Sion Hospital, for taking up the first clinical meeting at a very short notice. And I will now, without further ado, hand over to Dr. Hina Pandit, who is the Associate Professor at the Department of Psychiatry, Lokmanya Tilak Municipal Medical College. She will carry over proceedings from here. Over to you, Hina. Yeah.
Thank you, Avinash. Good evening, respected Chairperson Mundra sir, seniors, fellow colleagues, and my dear students. On behalf of the Department of Psychiatry at Sion Hospital, I welcome you all today for the BPS clinical meeting on psychiatric drug overdose. The statistics speaks for themselves. Our current approach to suicide prevention is simply not working. In spite of all our efforts, we as psychiatrists have failed to prevent suicides globally. In our practice, we very commonly see patients who try to end their lives with over-the-counter medications and pesticides. But very often, we also come across patients who overdose on psychotropic medications which we have prescribed to them for therapeutic purposes. This is a sensitive topic which, to a certain extent, also points fingers at us, as one may argue that the overdose was iatrogenically induced. Psychotropic medication overdose never comes to our clinical attention first, and most of the times these patients end up being treated at ICUs. The reason why we chose to present this topic today is because physicians and ICU specialists are not familiar with the drugs, forget the side effects of our medications, and also there is an overlap between psychiatric symptoms that emerge due to the overdose and the delirium that emerges secondary to the overdose. Hence, it is vital to liaise with physicians and ICU specialists and work side along with them in the treatment of the patients who overdose on our medications. And to convey this very important message, we are presenting 5 cases today. The first case being of a medical student who survived an overdose of 100 tablets of 100 milligram of clozapine. Yes, you all heard me right. 100 tablets of 100 milligram of clozapine, making it a total of 10,000 milligram of clozapine. Along with this, we will also be presenting cases on atypical antipsychotic medication, lithium, benzodiazepine, and SSRI overdose. This is the first time since the start of the pandemic a clinical meeting is taking place. Hence, I request you all to kindly be patient and encourage our postgraduate residents. I now request Mundra sir to kindly take over. Thank you.
Hello. Videos on. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm personally a very, very unhappy person with regard to this because this was my experience as a first term resident. And I had suffered immensely emotionally because of this. It was a medical student who had come to our unit and he was depressed and he was given to me for counseling and he was put on medication. And sure enough, because it was me, in a few days, he took an overdose, was admitted, and naturally as a medical student of our college, that time KEM Hospital, he was under intense treatment and he died very, very slowly. A huge number of consultants were involved, a huge number of treatments were done, and he was incubated and whatnot. And every day, of course, one had to go and do rounds over there. And the business of feeling helpless, feeling angry, feeling hurt, feeling betrayed by the patient. How could he? I spent so much time trying to talk to him, trying to help him. How could he do this to me? It was about how could he do this to me? He ultimately died. He had to face his family and all the drugs that were given. But what stayed was this. One tries to help someone and one gets blamed for it. It has been a personal experience which was very, very difficult to tolerate. I had my consultant seniors who were my bosses who just took charge and said, yes, it happens. Now take this second patient we are giving you, please take for counseling. So within the same week, they gave me some other patient to handle just to see that I don't get stuck on one patient who I felt betrayed me. Let's listen to our young colleagues and see whether they feel betrayed in any way. Case number 1, clozapine overdose, Dr. Krishna Priya and Dr. Rahul. Please start.
Good evening, all faculty members, my seniors and colleagues. I am Krishna Priya and my colleague Dr. Rahul. We are presenting an interesting case of a patient surviving 10,000 milligram of clozapine. Presenting a case of 20-year-old MBBS student known case of schizophrenia, was on treatment since past 5 years. She was on various combination of medications of olanzapine, risperidone, haloperidol, blunanserin, on which she developed akathisia and tremors. She is on treatment from our OPD since June 2018. She has received 13 ECTs and was on clozapine 100 mg and up to 300 mg. As she developed EPR on other antipsychotics, she was maintained on clozapine for 1.5 years. 25 days back, she had some academic stressors, so she consumed 100 tablets of 100 mg of clozapine, that is 10,000 mg of clozapine in afternoon, after which she slept for next 19 hours and she threw a convulsion, so she was brought to our OPD. She was excessively drowsy, intermittently getting agitated and confused. Also, she gave history of excess clozapine consumption. She again had seizure episode in our OPD. She was immediately shifted to MICU. On examination, her pulse was 134 beats per minute. Her blood pressure was 80 by 40 millimeters of mercury. She had severe hypotonia to the amount she couldn't support her neck and she couldn't maintain her body posture as well. As part of her emergency management, she was given injection midazolam and injection phenytoin. Intravenous fluids was also started, and for her tachycardia, tablet propranolol 10 mg 3 times a day was given, and later ivabradine 5 mg twice a day was also added to manage her increased heart rate. Stomach wash was given on admission earlier. Injection glycopyrrolate was given for excessive salivation. Her serum clozapine levels were unrecordable. That is, it was more than 1,000 microgram per liter, and also her serum norclozapine levels were unrecordable as it was more than 500 micrograms per liter. She was admitted in MICU for 8 days, and then she was shifted to general medicine ward where she was for the next 11 days. Later, she was transferred to psychiatry ward where gradually her symptoms of schizophrenia started reappearing. So she was restarted on clozapine 25 mg as she developed EPR on other antipsychotics earlier, and blunanserin 8 mg was also added to potentiate the action of clozapine as there was still risk of seizure. As advised by medicine department, she was also started on anti-epileptic tablet brivaracetam 50 mg twice a day. Currently, she has been discharged and well maintained. Now, I request Dr. Samir for the next case. Is 250 mg of olanzapine lethal?
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Today, I would like to present a case of olanzapine overdose. A 32-year-old female, case of schizophrenia, who was receiving treatment since 2007, was well maintained on tablet olanzapine 20 milligram since 2017. She was diagnosed with diabetes mellitus in 2018. Her sugars were well controlled with metformin 500 milligram BD. As the patient was diagnosed with diabetes mellitus, she was advised to switch to another antipsychotic, but as she was behaviorally well maintained and her blood glucose was well maintained by tab metformin 500 milligram BD, so she insisted to continue on tab olanzapine. In June 2021, due to an altercation with the parents, she consumed 50 tablets of olanzapine 5 milligram. That makes a total of 250 milligram. Within few minutes, she felt giddy and confessed to the relative about the consumption. The relative noticed slurring of speech and intermittently failure to recognize them. She was brought to the Sion Hospital, admitted in MICU. Gastric lavage was done. Injection pantoprazole 40 milligram IV, injection ondansetron 12 milligram IV, injection thiamine 300 milligram in 100 cc normal saline. As her glucose metabolism was deranged, thiamine cover was given and tab metformin 1000 milligram was given. As the patient was drowsy, so the bedside urine testing kit for benzodiazepine, barbiturates, and opioid was done. It was negative for the same. Her deranged blood parameters were increased creatinine kinase, that is 765. HbA1c was 7.5. Deranged urine parameters were urine ketone and urine glucose were present. So she was drowsy and disoriented for about 24 hours and was kept under observation in the medical ward for about 48 hours. She was referred to the psychiatric OPD later, and as her HbA1c was deranged, tab olanzapine was stopped and it was replaced with tab ondansetron 8 milligram. The patient later admitted that the suicide was an impulsive act and it was not premeditated, and reassured that she won't attempt it again. The patient is currently well maintained on glunansarine. Thank you, everyone. Now I would like to request Dr. Shauruk to present the management of antipsychotic overdose.
Thank you, Dr. Sameer. Good evening. Our presentation now will focus on the management of antipsychotic overdose. Before we begin on the management, I would like to inform that we have divided our presentation into 3 different parts. We will first be focusing on how we suspect antipsychotic overdose. Moving on, we will be discussing how we can confirm a diagnosis of antipsychotic overdose. And finally, the management will concentrate on an emergency basis of management and specific treatment for specific antipsychotic overdose. To begin with, how do we suspect an antipsychotic overdose? The common presentation in most atypical and typical antipsychotic overdoses is an exaggeration of the adverse effects which are seen at therapeutic doses. In the case of typical antipsychotic medications, however, the most common feature becomes extrapyramidal reaction. This can present in the form of acute dystonia and akathisia. The next common presentation is that of central nervous system depression. Now, central nervous system depression is dose dependent. In the case of consumption of large doses of antipsychotics, it can present in the form of coma, respiratory depression, or loss of airway reflexes. Then comes the point about anticholinergic side effects. Now, the drugs most commonly implicated are clozapine, quetiapine, and olanzapine. The mechanism of action behind anticholinergic toxicity is M1 antagonism. This produces a state of agitated delirium where measuring creatine phosphokinase levels becomes imperative, as I will be mentioning in the future slides. Another common presentation is that of hypotension. Patients do present with QTc prolongation, and this is due to antagonism of delayed rectifier potassium channels. Seizures is another common presentation where the greatest risk belongs to clozapine. Finally, a rare side effect, but the most important one, is neuroleptic malignant syndrome. How do we confirm a diagnosis of antipsychotic overdose? In this picture, history taking becomes our most important tool or a weapon in diagnosing a case of antipsychotic overdose. Now, diagnostic clues in the form of a constellation of symptoms which the patient usually presents with helps us in diagnosing an overdose. Otherwise, we have to rule out trauma. Unfortunately, in the cases of antipsychotic overdose, we do not have a specific confirmatory test. As in, we do not have a specific urine drug toxicity kit, which we can use in the case of substance abuse, but not here. Also, another disadvantage that plays in our treatment of antipsychotic overdose is serum levels, measurement of serum levels. Now here, there are two drawbacks. First, the serum levels, the results of serum levels take a long time to be procured by the doctors, which is not in par with our treatment because antipsychotic overdose requires emergency management, whereas we can't wait for serum levels reports to arrive. Secondly, the cost of such serum level investigations also tends to become a drawback, especially for the strata of socioeconomic strata that comes to our OPD or our hospital. Other investigations that aid in our diagnosis include a 12-lead electrocardiogram, routine blood investigations in the form of complete blood count, liver function tests, renal function tests, and serum electrolytes. Finally, creatine phosphokinase monitoring is done in the cases of agitated delirium because these pictures usually produce rhabdomyolysis, which can be measured by creatine kinase, as I had mentioned previously. Finally, we also measure blood glucose levels, which is measured for every patient admitted with altered mental status. Coming to the management of antipsychotic overdose. Now, when we talk about emergency management, there are two important aspects to be covered. If the patient is presenting to us within an hour of ingestion of the drug, also if the patient is awake and alert, then a single dose of orally administered activated charcoal becomes the treatment of choice. However, if the patient is presenting after more than an hour of consumption of the antipsychotics or is showing signs of encephalopathy, then we have to avoid activated charcoal. One important point to be noted here is that activated charcoal is never to be forced upon a patient because due to the risk of aspiration. Otherwise, the other agents that usually help in the supportive management are sympathomimetic agents. A point again to be noted here is that beta agonists like dopamine and epinephrine are usually avoided in antipsychotic overdose because they tend to potentiate the hypotension. In such cases, alpha adrenergic agonists like norepinephrine become our friends. Other measures that are important in emergency management include intubation in cases where there is a loss of airway reflexes, magnesium sulfate if the QT interval is more than 500 milliseconds. Benzodiazepines are usually imperative in cases of hyperthermia, and depolarizing agents like dantrolene help with neuromuscular blockade issues. Seizure management, as we will be discussing further, is an important role because it can result in death of the patient. Other than that, close monitoring and observation are all that is required. When we talk about specific treatment, we have to first address drug-induced QRS prolongation because this can result in arrhythmia and sometimes fatal issues. Here, the treatment of choice becomes sodium bicarbonate in a dose of 100 to 150 milliequivalents as an IV bolus. In resistant cases, hypertonic saline becomes our treatment of choice. Now, when we come to dealing with seizures, IV benzodiazepines are a drug of choice. However, if an IV access is not available, then intramuscular options can be considered. Here, lorazepam in a dose of 1 to 2 milligrams IV every 3 to 5 minutes for seizure control, or diazepam 5 to 10 milligrams IV every 10 minutes becomes imperative. In cases of resistant patients, phenobarbital in a dose of 10 to 15 milligrams per kg IV administered over 20 to 30 minutes is given. Finally, when we speak about long-term management, we have to evaluate the patient about his current psychiatric status and restart psychotropics with a lower dose with continual monitoring. Now, in summary, as we can deduce, atypical antipsychotic agents tend to have a safer overdose profile. In the sense, olanzapine and risperidone are seen to produce less deaths as compared to other antipsychotics, and also the side effects are benign. Otherwise, worrisome overdose profiles are seen with clozapine and typical antipsychotics. Also, we have to be mindful of co-prescribed medications and medical conditions while prescribing psychotropics, not just therapeutically, but also in the rare case of an overdose. We also have to be mindful of co-ingestants which might have been taken with the atypical or typical antipsychotics, because these co-ingestants will affect the cytochrome enzymes and thus change plasma levels of antipsychotics. Now, for an example, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors increase the plasma levels of antipsychotics by changing the cytochrome enzyme levels. Thank you. That will be all. I would now like to invite Dr. Rishikesh to present the next case.
Thank you, Dr. Shahrukh. Good evening, everyone. This was when I was 1.5 years back when I was in first year. I got to see the patient of lithium toxicity. Next slide. So next slide, please.
I
She was 19-year-old female. She was 19-year-old female, a known case of bipolar mood disorder since around 4 years. Till that time, there were multiple episodes of depression occurring around 1 to 2 episodes every year. And there was only one episode of mania which occurred last year. She used to have irregular compliance, which caused more frequent relapses. She was started on tablet olanzapine 10 mg and tablet lithium SR 400 mg BD, total of 800 mg since last 3 months and was well maintained. She had relapse of the depressive episode since 15 days with around moderate depressive features. To see if the compliance was good, serum lithium levels were done, which were 0.7 milliequivalent per liter, which were in the normal therapeutic range for the maintenance dose, as well as her thyroid function test was done, which was within normal limit. So she was started on tablet fluoxetine 20 mg. Next. After 3 days of starting tablet fluoxetine with only some another trivial stressor, she consumed 30 tablets of lithium carbonate 400 mg. The total of 12,000 mg. Within 1 hour of starting, within 1 hour of consumption, she started having nausea, metallic taste, loose stools, and giddiness. She also had 2 episodes of convulsions. After that, during coming to casualty, she started having irrelevant talks, maybe due to postictal confusion. She presented to casualty within 30 minutes. On examination, coarse tremors, slurred speech, and ataxia was found. Later, she had additional 3 episodes of convulsions after coming to casualty, and she became unconscious. The unconsciousness lasted for around 2 days. She was admitted in the ICU. Her blood levels were come. Serum lithium levels were 3 milliequivalent per liter, which was moderately raised only at the time during she came to casualty. The WBC count was 11,000, which was and also had mild granulocytosis. Serum sodium levels were moderately low, had hyponatremia with around 121 milliequivalent per liter, had also hypokalemia with 2.3 milliequivalent liter of potassium per liter. Her serum calcium levels were 13 milligram per DL, which were moderately raised. She also had ECG changes of heart rate 50 beats per minute, T-wave inversions, as well as QTC interval prolongation. Her renal function tests were normal and the thyroid function tests were normal as well. Her urine output was 3 liters per day during admission, at the time of admission. So next, in the treatment, all her psychotropics were stopped. Normal saline 1 pint was given around 6 times per day with potassium supplementations as well. The normal saline diuresis. She did not require any dialysis as her renal function tests were within normal limits. As she became medically stable, her serum lithium levels were repeated after 7 days, which came out to be 1 milliequivalent per liter, which were within normal range. She was in ICU for around 7 days. Then after that, she was transferred to the psychiatry ward. After transferring to psychiatry ward, as she had mild cognitive impairment, she was slowly started on tablet olanzapine and fluoxetine 10 plus 20 mg combination. She was well maintained on that. Within around 7 days, she got around 100% better with minimal residual symptoms. She was well maintained post discharge for around 3 months. And after that, we lost the patient as a follow-up. So thank you. Now I'll hand over to Dr. Sachin for the review of literature for mood stabilizer overdose. Thank you.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Rushikesh. Good evening, respected chairperson, faculties, seniors, and my colleagues. I will be presenting management review about mood stabilizer overdose. So lithium is a most commonly prescribed mood stabilizer, and it is a monovalent cation. So lithium overdose can be classified into three major categories depending on consumption pattern. So acute overdose in a lithium naive patient, acute overdose in a patient on chronic lithium therapy, that is acute on chronic, and chronic over medication or drug accumulation, which is associated with the most serious overdose. So how to suspect lithium overdose? So with the help of clinical features, they guide us in diagnosing lithium overdose. Gastrointestinal tract patient presents with nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, which typically occur within 1 hour of ingestion. Central nervous system patient presents with coarse tremors, hyperreflexia, nystagmus, ataxia, mild confusion to delirium, seizure, and coma. Renal manifestations are impaired urinary concentrating ability, nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, cardiovascular system, non-specific sinus node dysfunction, QT prolongation. The case which is presented by my colleague, patient had gastrointestinal presentation as well as central nervous system symptoms. And renal features are more common in patients presenting with chronic over medication. So how to confirm lithium overdose? So it is confirmed by clinical signs and symptoms which are consistent with lithium overdose and serum lithium concentration. So according to serum lithium levels, overdose can be categorized into three types: mild, moderate, and severe. So considering complex distribution pharmacokinetics, so clinical presentation is more important than serum levels in treatment. So serum lithium level reflect only the extracellular lithium concentration. In mild overdose, patient has serum lithium level between 1.5 to 2.5 milliequivalent per liter, and symptoms are nausea, vomiting, lethargy, tremor, and fatigue. So moderate between 2.5 to 3.5 milliequivalent per liter, and presenting symptoms are confusion, agitation, delirium, tachycardia, and hypotonia. With severe lithium overdose, that is more than 3.5 milliequivalent per liter serum lithium level, patient presents with coma, seizures, hyperthermia, and hypotension. So management. So how to treat? Obviously, after obtaining detailed history, first patient will be evaluated with the help of certain blood tests such as serum lithium, serum electrolyte, renal function test, blood glucose, and serum calcium, and electrocardiogram. Since lithium does not adhere effectively to activated charcoal, being a strongly ionized chemical, and also lithium is not metabolized and is eliminated primarily through the kidneys, and there is no antidote. So treatment is focused on removing the lithium from the body. So it is done with decontamination and elimination. And for decontamination, whole bowel irrigation, that is osmotically balanced polyethylene glycol electrolyte solution at a rate of 2 liters per hour for 5 hours. And if it is begun within 1 hour of ingestion of sustained release lithium, is highly effective gastrointestinal decontaminant. So other methods they are of elimination, such as normal saline diuresis. But patient should have normal renal function and there should be no heart failure. The case presented by my colleague, she was treated with normal saline diuresis and she responded very well. Sodium polystyrene sulfonate, it is an oral powder. It comes in sachet, each sachet of 30 grams. Around approximately 4 to 5 sachets are given over 24-hour period. And it is useful in patients with acute lithium overdose presentation. So, third method of elimination is hemodialysis. and it is the treatment of choice when fast and efficient extracorporeal lithium clearance is indicated. So following patients, they should receive hemodialysis. If serum lithium level is more than 6 milliequivalent per liter, then all patients, they should be treated with hemodialysis. If patients, they are on long-term lithium therapy, then even between 4 to 6 milliequivalent per liter, hemodialysis is recommended. Those patients with severe neurological symptoms, renal insufficiency, unstable hemodynamic status, then at level between 2.5 to 4 milliequivalent per liter, hemodialysis is indicated. And certain patients with end-stage renal disease, or there is an increasing trend of serum lithium level after hospital admission, then even at level between 1 to 2.5 milliequivalent per liter, hemodialysis is needed. And the goal of dialysis is to bring back serum lithium level below 1 milliequivalent per liter after 6 to 8 hours of hemodialysis. In certain cases, repeat dialysis is needed with rebound of levels. So after doing all these sorts of treatments, what is the response? So expected response differs according to the type of consumption. So patients suffering from acute overdose without whole body stores are expected to improve clinically rapidly, that is within hours to days with treatment. Patients with whole body stores and acute ingestion, that is acute on chronic overdose or chronic overdose, often take days to weeks to complete recovery, as already discussed by my colleague in previous case. And neurotoxicity in some patients, it is an irreversible effect after acute or chronic overdose. So the next mood stabilizer is sodium valproate. It is second most commonly prescribed mood stabilizer, and it is a primarily anticonvulsant. So clinical features after overdose are gastrointestinal tract, again patient presents with nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain. Central nervous system, patient will present with drowsiness, confusion, cerebral edema, and coma. Cardiovascular system, patient presents with tachycardia and hypotension. Previous patient had bradycardia. And metabolic complications are hypernatremia, hypoglycemia, and hyperammonemia. And lithium overdose presents with hyponatremia. So how to manage such patients? So again, initial history and followed by lab investigations which are relevant, such as serum valproate level, blood sugar, liver function test, serum electrolyte, serum ammonia level, and electrocardiogram. If patient is hemodynamically unstable, then correction of hypotension with the help of IV fluids, and airway and breathing management if it is compromised. For decontamination, charcoal is effective, and if there is a large ingestion, that is more than 200 milligram per kg, and if patient presents within 4 hours, then it is effective. For elimination, again, hemodialysis is considered in life-threatening overdose. Another molecule, carnitine, it can be considered as an antidote or adjunct. Though there is no strong evidence, but reasonable biological basis in the form of carnitine supplementation shifts the metabolism of valproate towards the beta oxidation from omega oxidation, resulting in less production of toxic metabolites. And since it is inexpensive and has a low risk of harm, so it can be considered in patients with certain complications such as metabolic acidosis, cerebral edema, hyperammonemia, and hepatotoxicity. And its starting dose is 100 milligram per kg, followed by 50 milligram per kg every 8 hours until coma or acidosis resolves. Thank you very much for, and now I hand over to my colleague, Dr. Ishita, for next presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Sachin. Sir, am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Sachin. Good evening, everyone. Today, I will be presenting a case of benzodiazepine overdose. So this is a case of a 34-year-old female who was working as a nurse in a private hospital, who was brought to the emergency of our hospital by her mother and her brother with chief complaints of not responding to verbal commands, not eating and drinking, and also unable to maintain posture since morning. The patient was apparently all right 2 days prior to this episode when her pet cat died due to some illness. Since then, her family members noticed a change in her behavior in the form of decreased interaction with family members, not taking interest in surrounding activities, not eating food, and remaining aloof. The next morning, her family members found her unresponsive to verbal commands and painful stimuli. So she was brought to the emergency department of Sion Hospital, where she was suspected to have a conversion disorder, and hence she was referred to psychiatry. On evaluation in psychiatry OPD, the patient was found drowsy, responding only to painful stimuli, having mumbled speech, and also she was unable to sit on the chair on her own. There was no past history of any psychiatric illness or any self-harm behavior. Now, due to these symptoms, we suspected some kind of poison consumption, and hence a urine drug kit test was performed. As we can see in the adjacent picture, the urine drug kit test turned positive for benzodiazepines. Hence, the patient was referred back to medical emergency, where she was started on treatment and she was admitted in the medical ward. Urine toxic screen was done, which showed urine benzodiazepines to be in the range of 5,321 nanogram per milliliters, which is much above the cutoff value of around 200 nanograms per milliliters. After 2 days of treatment, the patient was well oriented and was able to talk and walk properly. Therefore, she was referred back to psychiatry OPD. On interviewing, she agreed to consumption of 40 tablets, each of 500 milligrams of paracetamol, and about 10 tablets, each of 0.5 milligrams of alprazolam. She acquired the alprazolam tablets from her mother's prescription for insomnia. The patient also confessed that her intention was to die, as she was having repeated thoughts about how much suffering her pet cat must have undergone before it died. So hence we present a case of benzodiazepine overdose, which could have been misdiagnosed as a conversion disorder. I now request Dr. Pooja to take over and tell us about the management of benzodiazepine overdose. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rishita. A very good evening to respected seniors and all of my colleagues. The next part of the presentation will be in 4 segments. How do we diagnose a case of benzodiazepine overdose? How do we differentiate it from conditions that show symptoms? Thirdly, we'll go for the complications of benzodiazepine overdose. And finally, we'll go for the management part. Benzodiazepine acts by potentiating the action of GABA, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, leading to CNS depressant action. The concentration of benzodiazepine receptors are lesser in the brainstem, which houses the respiratory center, leading to relative sparing of the respiratory function. As a result of this, a patient of benzodiazepine overdose commonly presents with confusion, drowsiness, unresponsiveness, dizziness, blurring of vision, and slurring of speech, uneasiness and aggressive behavior. Uncommonly, we see difficulty in breathing, cold clammy extremities with bluish skin discoloration and muscular weakness. Concurrently, on examination, we see altered orientation and hallucination, poor Glasgow Coma Scale. Important to note here is a score less than 9 has a high risk for requiring ventilatory support. On neurological findings, we see ataxia, vertigo, diplopia, nystagmus, constricted pupils that are sluggishly reactive to light, dysarthria. As we all know, benzodiazepine have an anxiolytic and a sedative action. However, in cases of overdose, we see paradoxical anxiety and agitation. Uncommonly, we can have respiratory depression and circulatory failure, which presents with hypotension, bradycardia, hypothermia. Along with this, we can have hypotonia and areflexia. Now, what are the conditions that mimic the symptoms seen in benzodiazepine overdose? The most common one being acute intoxication of other substances which also have a CNS depressant action like alcohol and opioids. Others include alcohol withdrawal delirium. Some organic causes include delirium secondary to hypoglycemia and electrolyte imbalance, traumatic brain injury, intracranial hemorrhage, stroke, and encephalitis. Next. Now we go on to the complications of benzodiazepine overdose, the most common being coma, which eventually leads to death. In a lot of cases, we also see aspirational pneumonitis. Respiratory arrest is a very rare complication. In agitated patients, we might see rhabdomyolysis. In patients that receive parenteral benzodiazepine for a complicated alcohol withdrawal, there is always a risk of propylene glycol poisoning, which is used as a diluent. In these patients, we might see cardiac arrhythmias, lactic acidosis, hypotension, seizures, and coma. A rarer complication includes post-hypoxic leukoencephalopathy, which is commonly seen with heroin-addicted patients in overdoses. Another rare complication includes diplopia. Next, we go on for the management part, investigations. Firstly, we need to go for an arterial blood gas assay, 12-lead electrocardiogram, urine toxicology screen, which not only helps in diagnosing case of benzodiazepine overdose, but also helps us in knowing which other substances the patient might have overdosed concurrently. We need to go for a CT brain to rule out traumatic brain injury and intracranial hemorrhage. To rule out delirium secondary to electrolyte imbalance and hypoglycemia, we need to go for serum electrolytes and blood sugar levels, along with blood urea, nitrogen, and creatinine. We can also go for actinoaminophane and ethanol blood levels, as these two are the most commonly overdosed drugs along with benzodiazepine. To rule out complication of aspirational pneumonitis, we need to go for an erect chest radiograph. CPK levels might be needed in a patient in whom we are suspecting rhabdomyolysis. The management part of the benzodiazepine overdose. Firstly, we need to go for resuscitation in patients that have severe respiratory depression, so they might need assisted ventilation. Decontamination, which was in the past very commonly taken out with activated charcoal, gastric lavage, whole bowel irrigation, as was also done in the case which was presented by my colleague Dr. Ishita. However, it is not recommended, as within 30 to 60 minutes of benzodiazepine injection, 95% of the benzodiazepine gets absorbed. Hemodialysis and forced diuresis is also not recommended, as benzodiazepine are highly lipophilic and have a vast volume of distribution. Benzodiazepine overdose has a specific antidote, that is flumazenil, which is indicated in severe respiratory and CNS depression cases. Dosage includes 0.1 to 0.3 milligram given over 30 seconds until optimal consciousness is established. A maximum dose of 2 to 5 milligram can be given. Supportive care includes vital and Glasgow Coma Scale score monitoring. Fluid replacement and catecholamines can be given for hypotensive patients, and atropine infusion might be required in patients showing bradycardia. Alprazolam and diazepam are the two ones that show harmful overdose profile, where case reports have been shown with deaths with 20 times the therapeutic dose. Relatively safer overdose profile is seen with clonazepam, lorazepam, and chlordiazepoxide. Thank you so much. Next, I would like to forward the presentation to Dr. Faisal, who will be presenting on escitalopram overdose along with its management part. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. Good evening, everyone. Today I'll be presenting a case of a patient who survived 400 milligrams of escitalopram, and later on we'll see management of antidepressant toxicity. A 22-year-old female, case of major depressive disorder, was on escitalopram 20 milligrams oral tablet once daily since 2 years. Due to some relationship issues, in a fit of a rage, she consumed approximately 20 tablets, that is total of 400 milligrams of escitalopram. She confessed that to her relatives and they rushed to casualty within an hour of consumption. She presented to casualty with symptoms of palpitation, hurried breathing, tremors, restlessness, agitation, confusion, and a few bouts of vomiting. Immediately, she was shifted to medical intensive care unit, and even after admission, she had severe abdominal cramping and multiple episodes of vomiting. On examination, she had tachycardia with a pulse rate of 112, increased blood pressure, increased respiratory rate, exaggerated reflexes. She was very restless, but somehow she could communicate. Her ECG showed sinus tachycardia and mild QT prolongation. On arterial blood gas analysis, there was mild acidosis. So in management, as she had presented to us early, gastric lavage and activated charcoal were used to decontaminate. IV fluids like 5% dextrose normal saline infusion was given. Sodium bicarbonate was given in order to correct the acidosis and to prevent any further dysarrhythmias. Injection furosemide was given for diuresis, ondansetron for vomiting, and cold compressions to control her temperature. Benzodiazepine like injection lorazepam was used to control the agitation. Within 48 hours, she responded very well and she was vitally stable. After that, a psychiatry reference was taken and she was again started on 5 milligrams of escitalopram supervised medications and gradually increased on follow-up. So now we'll see management of antidepressant overdose. The mortality rate with tricyclic antidepressant is 34% as compared to 2% with SSRI. So it is very important that when a patient with major depressive disorder has tablet consumption, so we have to suspect the symptoms seen in SSRIs or TCA toxicity. So in SSRI overdose, patient presents with mental status changes, confusion, agitation, ataxia, fever, autonomic nervous system symptoms like diaphoresis, mydriasis, piloerection, tachycardia. Patient may also have dose-dependent QT prolongation as we had seen in our case, flushing and hypertension. Due to increased GIT serotonin, there is abdominal cramping, nausea, and even diarrhea. In TCAs, the patient presents with agitation and delirium. Patients may land up in convulsions or even status epilepticus. Patient has hyperactive deep tendon reflexes. Bowel and bladder paralysis may be present, and patient has mydriasis. There is dysregulation of blood pressure and temperature as TCAs block norepinephrine reuptake inhibition, which initially increases the norepinephrine causing hypertension, but later on when norepinephrine gets depleted and there is alpha-1 inhibition, so a patient lands up in hypotension and bradycardia. This may further progress to cardiac arrhythmias and even coma. Next, we see how to manage SSRIs and TCA toxicity. So in SSRI, it is very important to stop all the serotonergic agents. Benzodiazepines can be given for agitation, and we should avoid haloperidol because it can worsen the hyperthermia by inhibiting sweating through its anticholinergic action. So treat hypothermia with cooling blankets, fans, or even ice packs. Activated charcoal can be used if patient presents to us early. We have to watch for prolonged QT interval and any consequent cardiac dysarrhythmias. If patient has very severe overdose or toxicity, or in cases of serotonin syndrome, patient can be given anti-serotonergic agent like cyproheptadine, which is only available in oral form, 4 milligram tablet 2 to 3 times a day via nasogastric tube. In severe cases of rhabdomyolysis, aggressive hydration and alkalinization of urine with sodium bicarbonate is must. In tricyclic antidepressant overdose, we administer oxygen and monitor the vital signs. If patient presents early, then gastric lavage and activated charcoal are paramount. Alkalinization of urine with sodium bicarbonate 1 to 5 milligram equivalents per kg is very important as sodium reverses the blocked membrane channel and prevents any further dysarrhythmias, as well as the bicarbonate corrects the acidosis. Fluid loading and pressors are very important as the patient initially presents as hypertension, but over the time may go into hypotension and bradycardia. So fluid loading and pressors are to be given. Peritoneal dialysis and hemoperfusion are not that useful as TCAs have high volume of distribution. So if none other treatment are working, then peritoneal dialysis and hemoperfusion can be used. Benzodiazepine can be used for seizure control, and it is very important that even though patient has all anticholinergic symptoms, we have to avoid physostigmine, as physostigmine and TCA overdose have been associated with severe bradyarrhythmias. So we should avoid physostigmine in TCA's overdose. Thank you. Now I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Sagar sir for further proceedings.
Yeah, so thank you everyone. After the discussion of all the 5 cases and the management, we all must be confused to be done and how to identify. As we all know, there is a lot of confusion between leopard and the cheetah. On looking from far away, both of them look similar, but at a closer look, we can differentiate that one has some marks on the eyes, some has round spots and some has got oval spots and all. So to clear the confusion and just to summarize and just to give the pointers that in the casualty, if some patients comes with an overdose, how are we supposed to diagnose? So there are mainly following medications which we use, that are the typical antipsychotics, atypical antipsychotics, lithium, valproate, benzodiazepine, SSRIs and TCAs. And overdose of any one of them will cause drowsiness. So patient is going to come to us with drowsiness or sleepiness and in unconscious state. If we have the papers and the history and medication history, we can come to the conclusion. But if the patient does not have a relative and we don't have any history, then how are we going to judge? So first of all, we should see whether the patient is having any nausea or vomiting. If nausea and vomiting is present, then it is likely that the patient has consumed lithium, valproate or SSRIs. Then we see whether the patient had got any episode of seizures. If no seizures, then definitely he has not consumed overdose of valproate and benzodiazepine, as they are anticonvulsants. Then we have antipsychotics, lithium and TCAs, which is causing seizures in overdose. Then we look for the tremors. If the patient has got tremors, then it can be either typical antipsychotics or lithium and valproate. Along with tremors, if the patient has got rigidity, kind of extrapyramidal reaction, then more prone that he has taken overdose of typical antipsychotics. Then we go to measure the pulse rate. If there is a majority of them will cause the increased pulse rate due to the anticholinergic effect. To note is the benzodiazepine. It will cause the decreased pulse rate. Lithium can cause both decrease and increased pulse rate depending on the patient. Along with pulse rate, we see the blood pressure. So decreased pulse rate and the decreased blood pressure is pointing more towards benzodiazepine. Both of them are increased, then it is more towards SSRIs. And rest of all will cause the decrease in blood pressure and increase in pulse rate due to anticholinergic action. So these are the clinical findings which will point towards a particular agent. Then we can have some investigations done and we can make a guess or we can just come to the conclusion for the treatment. So first and foremost, we can see the pupils. We see that the dilated pupils or the mydriatic pupils is classically seen in the tricyclic antidepressants overdose. Benzodiazepine can cause pinpoint pupils. Even atypical and typical antipsychotics are known to cause pinpoint pupils. Now, though atypical antipsychotic has got anticholinergic action, they don't cause mydriasis in overdose because it also has got an alpha-1 blocking action. So apart from anticholinergic, it has an action on alpha-1, which will cause the pinpoint pupils. Then we can do our electrolyte test. If sodium is very much high, then the patient has overdose of sodium valproate because it has a sodium. Lithium benzodiazepine will cause hyponatremia. Classic for lithium overdose is less sodium, less potassium, and more of calcium, hypercalcemia. So this is the classic picture for lithium overdose. Then we can do ECG. ECG changes is seen in lithium toxicity, atypical antipsychotics, and typical antipsychotics. Then we have the drug monitoring for benzodiazepine, lithium, and valproate to measure the serum levels. And in the end, for emergency cases, we have the drug urine kit test for diagnosing the benzodiazepine poisoning, as we did in our case. So this can help us to come to some of the conclusion or to suspect what overdose the patient has taken, and we can manage the patient accordingly. I think with this, we thank you all of them for patient listening, and now I hand over to the chairperson for the further proceeding. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. That was remarkably efficient. I'm very, very happy with all the presentations. I'm very happy with all the young people who have been so completely confident and stuck to the point and did a very wonderful speech. Thank you. Thank you very much. Feel proud. Yeah, now we can have people's opinions, questions, opinions. Raise your hand so then they can unmute you.
Dr. Chawda wants to speak. Just unmute him.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is one of the things that has often crossed my mind. I mean, I heard the first 45 half hour or so. I had to leave for something. It's always surprised me as to how a person can take, good Lord, as to how a person can take 100 tablets. How can a person take 100 tablets? You know, you start, I don't know if you people have ever tried, if you have diabetes and blood pressure and cholesterol and a thyroid and you have to take 8 or 10 tablets at a time, you almost die. Here we are talking of 100 tablets. How can a person possibly take 100? And if you're taking something like clozapine, where you've got, anyway, after about 10 or 15 tablets, you're going to be so sedated. I find it incomprehensible to understand how a person can take 100. Now, your presentation was fantastic and all of that is very good. But can some kind soul enlighten me on this question? Maybe Dr. Mundra can. Dr. Mundra is the senior most. And Dr. Dhavale is also around. How can a person take 100 tablets?
May I respond?
Yes, Dr. Nilesh.
Yeah. See, I was seeing this patient, and when the mother called me that she is very drowsy and sleepy, I asked her that whether she has taken overdose of any medication.
Huh.
And I said, go and check her medicine box and try to wake her up and ask. And she woke her up and asked, because, you know, even with a drowsy state, you are able to wake up the patient, and she became a little conscious and said, have you taken any medicines? So she said, yes, I have taken 100 tablets. And obviously, as you pointed out, I also did not believe her. I said, how can anybody take 100 tablets of clozapine? So I said, go and check again. And she again checked, and there were 10 wrappers which were empty. So what she had done, she had started taking tablets, and clozapine, the absorption takes place only after 2.5 hours. So if you are taking tablets gradually, you don't vomit, and you can continue taking medicines without becoming drowsy. And after only 2.5 hours, when the absorption starts and the blood level starts rising, she started feeling drowsy. So actually, she started taking medicines at around 1 o'clock. She started feeling drowsy by 4 or 5 when the mother noticed. She called me. I said, this is dangerous, 100. You should immediately take her to the hospital. But she said, even I am not very sure. And then they waited for 19 hours thinking that she may not have taken so many tablets. And next day morning, when she started throwing convulsions, immediately they brought her to the hospital. We did the blood level. Blood level was done almost after 24 or more hours, and still the clozapine level and the norclozapine levels, so clozapine was more than 1000 micrograms and norclozapine was more than 500, which is not measurable. It is very, very high. So it was confirmed, and when she got up, she confirmed that she had taken 100 tablets. So now, earlier also we had doubt, and in we reviewed the literature. There are cases of 50 tablets and 80 tablets which people have consumed of clozapine, and people have survived. And say I personally take almost 9 or 10 tablets in the morning, 9 or 10 tablets in the evening. So in a day, I take 20 tablets. Many of our patients who are on multiple drugs, treatment-resistant patients who are on 2 or 3 antidepressants, 1 or 2 antipsychotics, 1 or 2, they usually takes 20-25 tablets per day routinely.
So per day is different from at one time. That's the only thing I'm saying.
So gradually they start taking, it's not at one time, but over a period of maybe say 1.5 hours, 2 hours, they have taken this 100 tablets.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you. I was just curious. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Anyone else? Anybody else has a question? Or any opinion or any experience? You can unmute anybody who's putting up the hand.
Good afternoon, sir. Hello.
Hi, Yogesh, bolo.
Hello. Sir, we have one patient from remote area of Nasik, just bipolar disorder. His weight is around 100, 110. He is on haloperidol, quetiapine 1200, haloperidol 20, risperidone 60, and triaxiphenadil 8 milligram, and Melat. I started him on Melatonin because of not getting sleep 5 milligram. And despite he takes 10-15 tablets of flufenazine and with miltram from some local practitioner, and he doesn't get any effect. Sometimes he takes 10 tablets of haloperidol on the top of I mentioned that doses. Still, it doesn't get any effect. No cardiac effect, no renal effect, sir.
Yeah, a very interesting case, Yogesh. I have a patient who takes 80 tablets of benzodiazepines every day for last so many years.
No liver effect. We check haloperidol also. No find of toxicity. Yes, sir.
See, we all have very powerful liver. As you said, in one of the patient, she took 40 tablets of 500 milligrams of paracetamol along with benzodiazepine. Alprazolam was only 5 milligram, which sedated her, but paracetamol was 20,000. That is 20 grams of paracetamol, and she survived without any problem. So most of us have very powerful liver, and liver is the, if you have a strong liver, you can metabolize. Second thing, you develop tolerance. So see, initially I wonder, if you take 25 milligram of clozapine, you will sleep for 3 days. I had a patient whom I had prescribed 10 milligram of clomipramine on day 1, and he slept for 3 days. He came on Saturday. Sunday morning, he caught my collar. He said, "Mera Sunday kidhar gaya?" I took 10 milligram of clomipramine on Saturday night. I woke up on Monday morning. But we know that OCD patients tolerate 300 milligram of clomipramine, and still sometimes they complain of insomnia. So we are all different metabolically, and some of the people have rapid metabolizer, ultra rapid metabolizer, and over a period of time, they have more and more powerful liver enzymes, and they can metabolize very large quantity of medicine.
Sir, I read from Harrison, because of especially Asian, the CY put the system is slightly different than other country people. We have a lot of variation. Even homozygosity and heterozygosity is very different in even Asian people. So drug level doses require different for Asian people. Especially I can give the example of clopidogrel. Sometimes the clopidogrel doses, some require different and Indian people require different doses. Hello?
Yes, yes. Yes,
so
your point is well taken.
Yes, sir. Individualized treatment approach and long-term clinical follow-up with close observation of symptoms is very important in these patients, and to keep the watch whether he's developing resistance to polypharmacy or not.
Yes, majority of us are rapid metabolizer. You have to be careful with a slow metabolizer.
Yes, definitely, sir.
Yeah. Sir, there has been a question on absolute neutrophil count in the case of clozapine overdose, and as we have seen, it was within normal limits. So I think what they are asking in acute intoxication, WBC count does not get affected much because it takes time to go to the bone marrow, and then it will cause depression in the bone marrow, and then it can hamper the WBC count. So I think that person is concerned
very
about
true, very
WBC,
true.
and then
See,
so that's why WBC count is not indicator. Yeah.
yes, earlier, even when they were giving chlorpromazine, when chlorpromazine came new in the market, I remember one of the very, very senior person told me that they used to do the blood count every week when the chlorpromazine was launched earlier. And earlier, we all remember that when clozapine was launched about 20-25 years back, there was a guidelines that every week you should do the blood count, send that report to Glaxo, and then only Glaxo will release another 7 days medicine. Over a period of time, as Dr. Mundra says, use clozapine like water. Sir, I'm quoting you that over a period of time, now we are using clozapine like water, and we have used so much of clozapine that now nobody bothers to do blood count and regular monitoring. And once in a while, we do see a case of leukopenia or little agranulocytosis. Immediately you stop the medicines, and over a period of next 1 week, majority of the patients recover.
Yeah, that's and yes, one uses everything with clozapine, with chlorpromazine, with everything. And yeah, I mean, it's good that we are willing to be aggressive, willing to go all out to treat a person. And one thing is being careful and being conservative and being watchful. But the other thing is, yeah, let's produce some effect instead of just worrying about side effects. So I'm glad that you'll take charge of treating the patient and making him well, not just worrying about what could go wrong. Any other questions? Any other comments?
Yes, sir. There is a comment from Dr. Hemant that whether we should be careful for prescribing benzodiazepine in anxiety cases because of this overdose.
Who wants to answer?
Sir, shall I speak?
Yes, please.
My question actually really means that many people have problems of anxiety, lack of sleep. So can we give more doses? Because we are very conservative in prescribing the benzodiazepines for fear of any overdose. So should we be liberal in prescribing benzodiazepines?
I think these are Nilesh, you're muted. Nilesh, you're muted.
Yeah. Hemant, I would use the word judicious use.
Yes.
Neither liberal nor conservative.
Uh-huh.
Judicious use is the right word. See how much is required, when it is required, for how long it is required, whether it is benefiting the patients, whether the patient is developing tolerance, whether he is abusing. Depending on that, you take the call. Each patient is different, requirement of each patient is different. And that's why don't generalize, or let's not over generalize. There are people who are very, very conservative for use of benzodiazepines. There are people who are quite liberal.
Yeah, that's my point. That some people need 2 milligrams of lorazepam even 3 times a day, but we are scared of writing it on paper for fear of any further legal problems. But they really
Sir,
need it. So they take it out of
sir,
the.
can I add?
Yes. Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, Yogesh.
Sir, actually what happens, sir, those who are non-psychiatric people, they are prescribing alprazolam like hell. Despite
True.
we are more aware of that it causes more dependence and withdrawal symptoms, and they are very dangerous profile. And generally we prescribe in safer profile like lorazepam, clonazepam, and we should not fear while prescribing. And we should just take care while along with the anxiety and how insomnia, whether it's a maintenance insomnia or whether it's early morning insomnia. Depending that, and we have to calculate the dose which is having a half-life, and then we can prescribe, so without any fear. Otherwise, what happen, we are just because of fear, we are not treating the sleep. If sleep is not proper, then anxiety develops next day. So we have to take care of daytime anxiety with non-sedating or any propranolol or non-sedating benzodiazepine, or nighttime with melatonin or any sleep maintenance drug for or long sleep maintenance or early awakening, just like zolpidem control release or long act. Those who have early awakening, we can easily go for clonazepam or lorazepam. Hello.
Sagar, Dr. Mundra wants to say something.
For me, the principle has been that if you starts somebody on benzodiazepine has to take responsibility of taking off the benzodiazepine. Now, this should be 100% according to me, the target. If you start somebody on alcohol, it is your business to see that you stop him from alcohol. So be very, very clear. In my mind, I am certain if you do not have the strength to take off the benzodiazepine, don't start. I don't know how many people have indulged in getting after a patient and getting him off benzodiazepine. The hundreds and hundreds of prescription that one sees, and the last bottom line, whether it's a physician, whether it's a surgeon, whether it's a gynecologist, anybody, the last line is always a benzodiazepine, because patient soega to doctor ko neend aayega. And it is remarkable that you have patients from 20 saal se leta hai, 30 saal se leta hai, and we have people who are 70 and 80, and one worries ke bathroom mein gir gaya, hatti toot gaya, and nobody's ever looking at that. Ye kya goli kha raha hai aur kyun kha raha hai. So this is a personal opinion. I'm very, very strong on this. You can start it, use it, lovely drug, great effect, immediate effect, unlike most of our tablets which don't have fast effects. But we have to stop it.
Yes.
Any other opinions, any other points? Because if there is nothing, then we'll come to an end.
Sagar, there is one question from Dr. Alim Siddiqui. Dr. Alim, welcome to our Bombay Psychiatric Society meeting, and
Good
I'm so
evening,
happy
sir.
to see you.
Sir, good evening. Excellent, excellent. Very nice presentation, sir. I had to hold my OPD to go through the session.
Thank you very much, sir. A very relevant question. His question is how to prevent.
Sir, my point is how to avoid landing up in such a situation. How to prevent.
Absolutely. Two important points. One, high suspicion of index that this patient has a high suicidal risk. And number two, as we have said after each and every patient, supervised medication whenever possible. For each and every patient, luckily in India, the relatives are there. And we insist that relatives participation is there and supervised medication. So number one, it can be prevented. And in case if they take it, immediately they are detected.
So what I have done, one thing is use of bibliotherapy. What I have printed a few lines on the back of my prescription, if you can see like this, in my prescription. So in that I have written the local language, रोगी के पास सभी दवाएं ना रखें और दवाओं को supervise करें. And I make sure that my staff says कि patient and attendant has to read this. अगर कोई confusion हो तो मुझसे आता है. So some I think incidents I have been able to prevent just by this use of information that is just hammered in the head of the patient and the attendants.
The last question by Dr. Taskin. Does the case of overdose death of any psychotropic held the prescribing physician medico-legally responsible? To the best of my knowledge, if there is a dereliction of duties or deviation, then yes, anyway you are responsible. But if you have taken all the precautions and in spite of that, if the patient attempts, and when you come to know you take all the due precautions, refer him to the right hospital or help him out, then probably you are not responsible.
All right, I think that more or less covers all the question and answers. It has been a
Yes,
lovely discussion. It is nice to know of 100 tablets of 100 milligram clozapine. We can remember it for life. We also have to come to this, as I said, in my 45 years back, what I felt when the patient did that, 45 and 50 almost hone ko aaya. When that patient did that, my first psychotherapy patient, my first counseling patient, and this slap in the face. These sessions that you've taken with me, 2-3 sessions, I reward you by taking your pills, swallowing them, and dying. This whole business of our patients using our treatment to hurt themselves, it is a remarkable thing to go through. It is a remarkable thing to recover. We require a lot of solidity because otherwise there is intense anger. Is this all that it meant? Itna sab kiya, uska ye natija. This is how you thank me. One grows up and realizes, yes, some people care to do that. Some people wish to die. Somebody has a right if he has decided that he doesn't want your treatment. It takes require maturity, not just the technique of helping them out, but being able to then accept the patient again, rather than worrying, oh my God, whom am I going to give tablets? This guy, again, in his hands. But that we can take charge again, we can forget about what happened, we can trust again, because often the rest of the world is not going to trust him. So it does require a lot of emotional strength to be able to handle these patients. And I'm very, very glad that this thing came up. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
everyone, for attending.
Now we request Dr. Sonana Madam to just say what thanks from our department.
Good evening, everyone.
Sushma, you are muted.
Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, loud.
Good evening, everyone. To end our presentation for the evening tonight, I would like to thank the Bombay Psychiatric Society and Dr. Avinash D'Souza for giving us the opportunity to be the opening batsman for the clinical meeting starting this year. A big thanks to Dr. Mundra sir for taking out time from his busy schedule, that too in the middle of the week, and then sharing his a very painful experience and his insight into this problem. A big thanks to our audience for a patient listening and then them giving their own insight and asking such interesting questions. So a big thank you to everyone and good night. Priyanka can take over.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Sushma ma'am. Thank you, Nilesha sir. Thank you, the entire team, and thank you, Mundra sir, for the knowledgeable words. We all have learned a lot today. And I know everyone was delighted because after long, we've seen an attendance of around 130 participants in a clinical meet, which is big, which would have not happened if we were not on an online platform. We have people from all over who has joined, and I'm glad that we got to learn so much. Sion came first because it's very close to everyone's heart. I mean, especially now, Avinash sir is associated with Sion. I've been a part of Sion Hospital, so we know. We always learn a lot from all our seniors. Thank you everyone for joining us today. The next program will be updated to everyone over email. Today's clinical meet will be available on YouTube channel. So everything we are conducting now is uploaded on the YouTube channel of Bombay Psychiatric Society. Please don't forget to watch it, like it, and share it with all your friends. Thank you so much. Bye all. Thank you.
Good night.